with Just and Jan.
So you are probably staring at a spreadsheet right now, right?
Oh, almost definitely.
Yeah. Or, I mean, maybe you are sitting in your morning commute just looking at the gray sky through your windshield.
Just kind of trapped in the routine.
Exactly. And there is this incredibly vivid, like almost cinematic daydream playing in a loop in your head.
The big escape.
The universal fantasy, right? Packing it all up, selling the heavy furniture, breaking the lease, handing in your security badge, and just leaving.
Right, just getting out.
You picture yourself waking up to, I don't know, the sound of the ocean in Costa Rica. Or maybe you were logging onto your laptop from this quiet, sun-drenched balcony in Andalusia.
Oh, yeah, the romanticized digital nomad vision. It is powerful.
It really is. You are finally living life on your own terms, completely untethered from the daily corporate grind.
And, you know, it is a powerful visual for a reason, because it has literally fueled entire industries.
Oh, for sure.
We see it constantly marketed to us, right?
Yep.
It is framed as the ultimate escape hatch, and it feels incredibly liberating to even just entertain the possibility of it.
It does. But the friction always comes when you try to pull that fantasy down into, like, actual reality.
Exactly. Because almost as quickly as that daydream starts, the reality check just hits you.
It hits you like a freight train. You slam right into what I call the wall before the airport.
The wall before the airport. I like that.
Yeah, and that wall is always built out of the exact same bricks, right? The logistics of survival.
The money.
The money. How do you actually afford to do this? Because, I mean, the mortgage still exists.
Groceries in your new paradise don't just buy themselves.
Exactly. And your current paycheck is physically tethered to the very desk you were trying so desperately to escape.
Which is where the romance of the move gets completely crushed by the actual mathematics of it.
Right.
People get so consumed by the destination, right? They are researching whether...
Yeah, looking at real estate listings for hours.
Checking visa requirements on random blogs. They treat relocation like it is just a geography problem.
Yeah.
But the source material we are diving into today, it fundamentally flips that entire script. It argues that relocation is not a geography problem at all.
Not even a little bit.
Right. It is strictly an income problem.
Okay, let's unpack this because we have a really incredible framework for our deep dive today.
We really do.
We are working from a script titled The Moment I Knew I Had to Leave. It is written by M. Rowe. She is the founder of Relocate with Revenue.
Yeah, and her stuff is fascinating.
It really is. And the mission for our deep dive today is to basically extract the mechanics of her strategy.
Right, getting into the gears of it.
Because we aren't just talking about abstract concepts of freedom here. We are looking at a literal masterclass on how to build location-independent income.
And crucially, doing it before you ever pack a single box.
Yes, before. You can find her broader ecosystem over at relocatewithrevenue.com, but today we are hyper-focusing on the 5 specific income streams she outlines in this script.
And what is really crucial to understand about these 5 streams is that she didn't just select them at random.
Right. They aren't just like generic side hustles.
Exactly. They are intentionally engineered to survive and in some cases actually thrive during economic recessions.
Oh, that is such a huge point.
Right. We are talking about getting lucky in a massive bull market or, I don't know, day trading crypto on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, hoping a coin goes to the moon.
No, this is about building financial armor. And the central philosophy driving this entire framework is a specific phrase from her script.
Income first, freedom always.
Yes, income first, freedom always.
Because if you try to reverse that order, like you put the freedom first, buy the plane ticket, and just assume you will figure the money out when you get there.
Oh, that is a recipe for disaster.
It totally is. You are essentially turning your dream destination into a high-pressure financial trap.
Right. You're just trading a stressful job at home for a stressful scramble abroad.
Exactly. Because the math of your life has to balance, regardless of what your coordinates are.
And the script actually introduces this concept of the living equation.
Oh, right, the living equation. Break that down for us.
So it states that this equation only works if your income travels with you.
Oh.
If the money you use to, like, buy food and survive is tied to a corporate headquarters or a specific local economy or, you know, a specific zip code,
right,
then the equation fundamentally breaks the second your passport gets stamped. You have to decouple your earning potential from your physical location.
But, okay, before we get into the 5 actual streams that achieve this decoupling, I feel like we have to address the giant elephant in the room.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this, the traditional advice.
Yeah, because if you spend like 5 minutes Googling how to build wealth or how to retire early abroad, you are immediately slammed with two massive pillars of advice.
Real estate and dividend portfolio.
Exactly. The advice is always just, oh, buy some rental properties, max out your 401k, live off the yields. But in Emro's script, those two things are explicitly, like deliberately excluded from her starting strategy.
Yeah, they are pushed completely to the side.
And I have to admit, I want to push back on that just a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because isn't real estate sort of the ultimate passive income dream for this exact lifestyle?
Well, sure. It is the finish line, though. It is not the starting line.
Wait, what do you mean?
I think you are looking at the end state of wealth rather than the actual mechanics of how you create it from scratch.
Okay, fair.
What is fascinating here is the underlying pragmatism of excluding them. The script isn't arguing that dividend portfolios or rental properties are bad investments.
Right. Obviously, they make money.
In fact, it acknowledges that a solid dividend portfolio is an incredibly recession-resilient income stream.
Yeah, the dividends keep paying out even if the stock price drops a bit.
Exactly. If you already have a massive portfolio kicking off, say, $80,000 a year in dividends, then yes, that income absolutely travels with you.
It totally does.
Yeah.
It doesn't care if you were in London or Lima.
Right. And actually, the purchasing power of those dividends explodes when you take them to a lower cost of living country.
Well, for sure. If you have 50 grand a year in dividends coming in and you move to, like, Kenya,
you are living like royalty.
you really are.
And that is the core concept of geo-arbitrage, which we will get into. But the catch with real estate and dividends is the barrier to entry.
The upfront cost.
Yes, building a dividend portfolio large enough to literally live off of, or acquiring a whole portfolio of rental properties from scratch.
It takes a ton of cash.
An immense amount of upfront capital. And honestly, it requires decades of compounding time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If someone is sitting in their cubicle today, desperately needing an escape plan for next year, telling them to just go buy 3 duplexes.
Or just put $1 million in an index fund.
Right. It is not actionable advice. It is basically fantasy.
Okay, I see the distinction now. Real estate and massive investment portfolios lock up your capital, and they take years to mature.
Exactly.
It is like, think of it like planting an orchard.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, if you plant an apple orchard, it is going to be amazing, right? 10 years from now, you will have more apples than you know what to do with.
And they just keep growing back every season.
Exactly. Is the ultimate passive yield. But you can't plant a seed today and eat an apple tomorrow.
You really can't.
If you are hungry right now, the orchard does not help you.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. If you are hungry today and you need to fund relocation in the next, 12 months, you don't have time to wait for the orchard.
Right.
You need strategies that look much more like foraging.
Yes, you need to walk into the woods with nothing but the skills you already have, know exactly what you're looking for, and start gathering sustenance immediately.
Exactly. You don't need to own the land to forage. You just need the knowledge.
So good. And that brings us right to the actual framework.
Yes. And that is exactly why the focus shifts entirely away from capital-heavy investments and pivots inward. If we strip away the capital, what are we actually left with?
Our brains.
We are left with the assets you already possess, your existing skills, your years of professional experience, and the highly specific knowledge currently locked inside your head.
Right. The stuff you take to work every day anyway.
Exactly. The goal is to take those intangible assets and translate them into borderless cash flow.
Which brings us directly to the first tool in Emro's framework. Stream number 1, consulting services.
Yes.
The premise here is taking your professional background, whether you spent the last decade in human resources or supply chain logistics, marketing strategy, whatever.
Healthcare administration, anything.
Right. And you take that field and structure it into an independent consulting practice.
But the mechanics of actually doing this require a massive psychological shift.
A shift in how you view yourself.
Yes. The script makes this really astute observation. It points out that 3 decades of professional experience in an industry isn't just a resume. It is a highly lucrative consulting practice just waiting to be structured. The problem is that most of us have been deeply conditioned to operate exclusively within the framework of an employee.
Oh man, that is so true. Like, if I ask you what you do, you give me your job title.
Right.
You say, oh, I am a director of operations. You completely identify as the role the corporation assigned to you.
Yes. And when you transition to a consulting model, you have to completely shatter that mindset. You are moving from an employee to an independent contractor.
Which sounds scary to a lot of people.
It does, but the fundamental difference is what you are actually selling.
Okay, break that down.
As an employee, you are basically selling your time, your physical presence in a specific chair from 9 to 5.
Right. And just your general compliance with the corporate culture.
Exactly. But as a consultant, you are selling none of those things. You are selling a highly specific outcome.
An outcome. Okay, so what does this actually look like in practice?
Let's use an example.
Let's say we have someone listening right now. Let's call her Sarah.
Okay, Sarah.
And Sarah is a mid-level supply chain manager. If she stays in the employee mindset, she thinks, well, I need to go find a remote job as a supply chain manager.
Right.
But if she does that, she is now competing globally against everyone else on Earth who wants to work from home, which just completely drives her salary down.
It is a race to the bottom.
Exactly. So how does Sarah pivot to consulting?
She has to identify the most painful, most expensive problem she already solves for her current employer.
Okay.
Sarah doesn't sell supply chain management. That is way too broad.
That's just a job title.
Exactly. But maybe Sarah is incredibly good at auditing international flight contracts and finding hidden inefficiencies.
Oh, that's specific.
Right. So Sarah's consulting offer becomes, I analyze your existing freight contracts and reduce your international shipping costs by 12 to 15% within 90 days.
Wow.
That is an outcome.
That makes so much sense. I like to think of this using the analogy of a Swiss Army knife.
Oh, let's hear it.
Okay, so as an employee, you are the entire knife. The company bought the whole knife, they keep it in their corporate pocket, and they just pull you out to use whatever tool they happen to need on any given Tuesday.
Right. Whatever fire needs putting out.
Yeah. Sometimes they need the blade, sometimes the screwdriver, sometimes those tiny little tweezers. They own access to all of it for a flat salary.
Yeah.
But as a consultant, you don't sell the whole knife. You literally take the knife apart, you find the corkscrew, and you rent out just the corkscrew at an absolute premium.
To a company that has a bottle of wine they desperately need opened right now.
Yeah, you just sell the corkscrew.
That is exactly it. You are selling the resolution to an acute problem. And this actually brings up a really crucial point about recession resilience.
Right, because that was a big theme in the script.
Because a lot of people hear the word consulting and they think it sounds incredibly risky during an economic downturn.
I mean, I would absolutely assume that if the economy crashes, companies tighten their belts.
Right.
Why on earth would they hire an expensive outside consultant when they were trying to save money?
Well, because you have to look at the actual mechanics of corporate panic.
Okay, how does corporate panic work?
When executives see revenue dropping, what is the very first lever they pull?
They cut full-time headcount. Massive layoffs.
Exactly. Why? Because full-time employees carry an immense amount of long-term financial baggage.
Oh, right. It's not just the base salary.
No, it is the healthcare benefits, the 401k matches, the severance packages, the HR liabilities, the physical office space.
They just want to shed all that permanent financial commitment immediately.
But, and here's the key, laying off the staff doesn't make the actual work disappear.
Wait, that is such a good point. The work still exists.
Precisely. The company still has these complex, highly urgent problems that need to be solved. And in fact, the problems are often more acute during a recession.
Because they're desperate to save money.
Right. They still need to reduce their freight costs or navigate a new tax compliance issue or restructure their failing marketing strategy.
So what do?
They turn to the contractor market. They hire someone, like our hypothetical Sarah, on a strict 6-month contract to solve that one specific problem.
Because it is a fixed cost.
Exactly. They pay her a premium for the outcome, but they don't have to marry her. They don't owe her a pension.
Wow.
Historically, the shift toward independent contractors actually accelerates during every major recession for this exact reason.
That is totally counterintuitive, but it makes perfect mathematical sense.
And it really does.
But, here is the friction point I hear all the time when people talk about consulting. People feel completely paralyzed by the setup.
The logistics of it.
Yeah, they think, I can't be a consultant. I don't have an LLC yet. I don't have a slick website. I don't have a custom logo. I don't have a massive social media following.
And Emro's script addresses this head on. She calls it the procrastination of preparation.
The procrastination of preparation. That is brilliant.
Because people will spend 8 months agonizing over like the exact font on their business cards instead of having a single actual conversation with a potential client.
It's basically a defense mechanism against the fear of rejection.
That is exactly what it is. The reality of consulting is shockingly minimal. You do not need a brand to start.
You don't.
No. You need one client, one defined engagement, and one successful result. That is it.
So you just, leverage your existing professional network. You go to LinkedIn, you look at the people you used to work with who have moved on to other companies.
Yep.
And you just message them and say, hey, I'm taking on freelance clients, specifically helping companies reduce their freight costs. Is your current team struggling with this?
It really can be that direct. The infrastructure follows the expertise, not the other way around.
Start doing the work, then build the website later.
Exactly. Now, consulting is incredibly powerful because it offers the highest hourly rate of any stream we are going to discuss today.
Right, the premium pricing.
It is the most robust, immediate way to replace your corporate salary while gaining location independence. Because you can deliver that freight analysis from a cafe in Lisbon just as easily as you can from a cubicle in Chicago.
But there is a ceiling to it, isn't there?
There is.
Because consulting is still fundamentally tied to your active time.
Right.
You are still trading hours, or at least, project deliverables for dollars. You still have to show up to the client calls on Zoom. You still have to do the heavy analytical work.
Yes.
If you stop working, the cash flow stops.
Which is why relying solely on consulting is a trap if your ultimate goal is true autonomy.
Okay, so how do we break out of that trap?
If you want to decouple your income from your time entirely, you have to shift your focus to the economics of zero marginal cost.
Zero marginal cost. Okay, talk to me about stream number 2.
Stream number 2 is digital products.
Right. Now we are talking about trading something once and selling it infinitely. Packaged solutions.
Exactly.
This could be an ebook, a comprehensive template, a budgeting toolkit, a specific framework for project management.
Even a curated list of AI prompts. The format is incredibly flexible.
And the script actually notes that this specific stream digital products is what profoundly changed the economics of MRO's own relocation journey.
Because, as I said, the format doesn't matter nearly as much as the mathematical principle behind it.
Right.
We are talking about compounding passive income built on your intellectual property. Let's look at the mechanics of it.
Okay, let's contrast it with consulting.
Perfect. With consulting, you do the work, you deliver the result, you get paid once.
Yeah.
With a digital product, you take the exact same expertise, but instead of delivering it live to one client, you do the heavy lifting up front to codify it into an asset.
You write it down, you build the template.
Right, and once that asset is built, the cost of reproducing and delivering it is virtually zero.
Right, because if you sell a PDF guide online, it costs you exactly the same amount of time and materials to sell one single copy as it does to sell 10,000 copies.
Exactly. There's no shipping, no warehousing, no inventory cost.
The profit margins are bordering on 100%.
But the true genius of digital products is revealed when we look at their recession resilience.
Okay, how does a PDF survive a recession?
It comes down to price point psychology. During an economic downturn, consumer behavior shifts violently. People panic.
Yeah, they start hoarding cash.
Right. They look at their credit card statements and aggressively slash discretionary spending.
They cancel the $15 a month streaming services they aren't watching.
They stop buying luxury clothes. They stop eating out.
So I am going to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If money is that tight, why on earth would someone spend $30 on a PDF? I mean, look at the internet right now. It is completely saturated with free information.
That's true.
I can go to a generative AI chatbot right now, type in a prompt, and get 1,000 words on literally any topic for free.
Yep.
So why would anyone pay for a digital toolkit?
That is the number one objection people have, but it completely misunderstands what people are actually buying.
Okay, what are they buying?
People are not paying for raw information. Raw information is a commodity. It is infinite. And as you said, it is free.
Right.
What people actually pay for is the structured curation of that information.
The structured curation.
They are paying to relieve an acute source of anxiety without having to spend 40 hours figuring it out themselves.
So it is the cost of context.
Exactly. Let's look at how MRO executed this in her own business. She didn't just write a generic how to travel blog post.
No, she listened to her audience.
Yes. She listened to the specific urgent anxieties of her followers, and she noticed 2 distinct problems.
What was the first one?
First, there were people who wanted to relocate to escape the grind, but they were absolutely terrified of losing their financial stability.
Which makes total sense.
And it was a deeply painful situation she had navigated herself after experiencing a personal loss.
So she basically packaged that lived experience.
Yeah.
She built what she calls the relocation blueprint.
Yes.
And it wasn't just like a list of pretty countries with nice beaches. It was a highly structured step-by-step roadmap for leaving the West.
Right.
It covered how to sequence your income streams, the exact mathematical thresholds you need to hit before quitting your job, and how to maintain your lifestyle.
And she priced these solutions very intentionally. When people are deeply stressed about their future, about how to afford retirement or how to escape a toxic job, they will absolutely spend $27 on a comprehensive guide.
Because it promises to map out an actual solution.
Right. It is not a luxury purchase for them. It is a tactical investment in stress reduction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The AI can give you a list of facts, sure.
Yeah.
But it currently cannot map out the specific, nuanced, emotional, and logistical sequence of steps required to dismantle an entire life in one country and rebuild it in another.
A $27 curated guide bypasses all that noise.
Exactly.
I see the power of that now. It's basically the difference between handing someone a random pile of bricks and handing them the actual blueprint for a house.
Yes. You are charging for the blueprint.
And she also built a second product, right? The relocation toolkit.
She did because she recognized a second segment of her audience that had a completely different problem.
They weren't ready for the massive blueprint yet.
Right. They were at the absolute starting line. They were just wondering, like, where do I even begin to explore this idea?
So the toolkit solved that specific earlier stage anxiety.
Exactly. Two different problems, two distinct digital products, addressing the customer exactly where their pain point was the sharpest.
That distinction is huge.
Yeah.
You aren't just creating random content. You are packaging a solution to a highly specific problem.
That is the whole secret to digital products.
But, we have to be realistic here. The script is very careful to clarify that digital products are not like a get-rich-quick scheme.
Oh, absolutely not.
You don't just put a $27 PDF on the internet and wake up to $1 million in your bank account the next morning.
No, they require significant runway. You have to build the asset, you have to refine the messaging, and crucially, you have to build the digital pathways for people to actually find it.
Right.
It takes time for the algorithm to index your content, for word of mouth to spread, for the passive engine to actually gain any real momentum.
Which exposes a critical flaw in the timeline, right? If someone is in a massive rush,
Yes.
like if I am looking at that wall before the airport and my corporate job is making me completely miserable today.
And you want to be out by October.
Exactly. I want to be in Thailand by October. I can't wait 8 months for my digital product sales to start covering my rent.
You can't.
And even consulting might take a few months to land a really big corporate client. I need cash flow immediately.
If the timeline is urgent, the strategy has to shift from passive building to active arbitrage.
Active arbitrage.
You need a fast, accessible mechanism to bridge the gap between your current reality and your future passive income.
Which brings us to stream number 3.
Yes. Freelancing.
The bridge income. So this is essentially taking the same skills you might use for consulting, but offering them on a much smaller project-by-project basis.
Right, using established global marketplaces.
We are talking about platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, TopTal. It could be copywriting, graphic design, video editing, translation, virtual assistants, or even just deep dive research.
Now, I know some people might think of freelancing as a race to the bottom.
Right, because you are competing with people all over the world for like $5 jobs.
And if you approach it without a strategy, it absolutely can be. But let's look at the mechanics of why this survives and even thrives in a recession.
Okay.
It follows the exact same logic as the consulting stream, just scaled down. When a mid-sized marketing agency loses a couple of major clients during a downturn, what do?
They freeze all new hiring.
Exactly. But they still have client deliverables. They still need blog posts written.
They still need podcast audio edited.
They still need pitch decks designed. So instead of hiring a full-time designer for $80,000 a year, they go on to Upwork.
And they hire a freelance designer for $1,000 to execute one specific campaign.
Right. The platform provides the agency with flexibility, and it provides the freelancer with immediate access to a global pool of buyers who have active funded needs.
But the real magic of freelancing, and I think this is genuinely the most powerful mathematical concept in this entire deep dive is geo-arbitrage.
Oh, without a doubt.
This is the absolute superpower of the location-independent worker.
It literally alters the fundamental physics of your labor.
That is a crazy way to put it, but it's true.
Geo-arbitrage is leveraging the economic disparity between where you own your money and where you spend it.
Let's really break down the math on this because the script gives a striking example that completely changes how you view an hourly wage.
Yes, let's look at the copywriter example.
Right. Imagine you have a freelance copywriter. They are working for a tech company based in Seattle. That tech company is perfectly happy paying standard U.S. market rates for good writing. Let's say $50 an hour.
Which is very standard.
To the company in Seattle, $50 an hour is just a rounding error. It is a completely normal business expense.
But our copywriter doesn't live in Seattle.
No. That copywriter has packed up their laptop and moved to Da Nang, Vietnam.
So they are earning strong U.S. dollars paid directly into a U.S. bank account.
Right. But their daily living expenses, their rent for a luxury high-rise apartment, their incredible street food, their internet, their utilities.
All of it is paid in the local Vietnamese currency.
Exactly.
And because the cost of living in Da Nang is drastically lower than in Seattle, the purchasing power of that $50 an hour just explodes.
It doesn't feel like $50 anymore.
Not at all. In terms of what it can actually buy, the lifestyle it can support, and the surplus savings it generates, that $50 an hour is functioning like $150 or even $200 an hour.
The client pays the exact same amount. The words typed on the screen are the exact same words. But the freelancer's wealth-building capacity is fundamentally transformed purely by the geography of where their physical body is sitting while they type.
It is mind-blowing leverage. You are essentially hacking the global economy.
And it becomes even more powerful when you layer in the concept of territorial taxation, right?
Yes, which many popular expat destinations offer.
Without getting too deep into the tax weeds, because that sounds exhausting.
Right, keep it high level.
Depending on how you structure your residency, you might only be taxed on money earned strictly within that country.
Exactly. So if your clients are all in the US or Europe, your effective tax rate locally can drop significantly.
Which just further compounds the whole geo-arbitrage effect.
It does. It is incredibly efficient.
Okay, that sounds like an absolute utopia.
It does, but
Yeah, we have to be honest about the reality of the freelance platforms.
we do.
Because it is incredibly active work. You are constantly pitching for jobs. You are dealing with endless client revisions. You are managing super tight deadlines.
You are absolutely still trading time for money.
Which is why the framing is so important here. Freelancing is not supposed to be the end goal.
Right. You shouldn't aim to be grinding on Upwork for the rest of your natural life.
Yes, the scaffolding analogy.
I love this analogy.
Think of your ultimate goal, that location-independent, passive income lifestyle, as a beautiful, permanent house you are trying to build.
Okay.
Freelancing is just the scaffolding you put up around the construction site. It's
Now-
absolutely necessary.
You can't build the house without it.
Exactly. It gives you the structure and the immediate funding to actually do the work. It pays for your groceries in Da Nang while you build,
Right.
but you don't intend to live in the scaffolding forever.
Exactly. You use the fast, active cash flow of freelancing to fund your immediate relocation, and then you use your evenings and weekends to build out the permanent infrastructure inside the house.
Right. The consulting practice and the digital products.
Yes. But eventually, you want to take the scaffolding down entirely.
You want to stop chasing clients on Upwork.
You want to reach a point where clients and customers are organically coming to you, asking to buy your digital products or hire you for consulting.
And to do that, you need a magnet,
You need to become a beacon for your specific expertise.
which seamlessly transitions us into the long-term engine of this entire framework. Stream number 4.
Content creation and audience building.
Yes, we are talking about launching a YouTube channel, a podcast, an in-depth newsletter, or like a highly focused blog centered entirely around your professional expertise or the specific problem you solve.
Now, the script is incredibly blunt about this specific stream.
It comes with a massive warning label, doesn't it?
It really does. This is the slowest, most grueling stream to build. The author talks about a minimum runway of 12 months of consistent publishing before you see any meaningful traction.
12 months is a long time to yell into the void.
It is. And because of that delayed gratification, it is the stream that people dismiss and abandon the fastest.
Oh, totally. They publish 3 blog posts, get maybe 14 views, mostly from their mom. look at the total lack of immediate revenue and just declare that the entire internet is saturated and content creation is a scam.
It's exactly like the psychology of going to the gym.
Oh, that is such a good comparison.
Right. Imagine deciding you want to get in shape. You go to the gym every single day, you lift heavy weights, you eat perfectly for 2 weeks.
And then you look in the mirror.
You don't see a six-pack, and you just angrily cancel your membership, convinced that fitness is a lie.
That is exactly what people do with the newsletter. You just haven't shown up long enough for the market or the algorithm to realize you are actually serious.
Exactly. The author actually shows her own early unpolished videos in her presentations to prove this exact point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she started at zero just like everyone else. Her lighting was bad, her delivery was unrefined, but she committed to showing up consistently, not perfectly.
The goal isn't immediate virality. The goal is compounding authority.
Compounding authority, yes.
Let's talk about the recession dynamics of content, though, because this genuinely surprised me when I read it.
It's very counterintuitive.
Right. My assumption would be that during an economic downturn, people consume less of everything. They just pull back from the world.
But the script argues the exact opposite.
It says that during times of economic anxiety, attention actually increases.
It's a flight to quality driven by fear. Let's look at the mechanics of human behavior during a crisis.
Okay.
When people are terrified about mass layoffs or inflation or the stability of their retirement accounts, they don't just bury their heads in the sand.
No, they start desperately searching for answers.
Exactly. They consume more information, not less, trying to figure out how to protect themselves.
But they become hyper-selective about what they consume.
Precisely. They have zero tolerance for fluff. They don't want to see lifestyle influencers flexing sports cars.
Or reading vague platitudes on Twitter.
Right. They want dense, actionable, honest substance. Channels and newsletters that offer genuine expertise, delivered calmly and transparently, experience explosive growth during recessions.
Because they become a trusted anchor.
Yes. Every major economic downturn in the last 2 decades has minted a new generation of trusted voices who simply stood up and provided clarity while everyone else was panicking.
And if we connect this to the broader strategy, building this audience isn't just about getting YouTube AdSense revenue.
Right, no. AdSense is barely the point.
Right. The audience isn't an isolated income stream.
No. The audience is the compound engine that powers the entire ecosystem. It is the absolute top of your funnel.
Okay, walk me through that.
Once you earn the trust of a dedicated audience, every other stream becomes exponentially easier. Your YouTube viewers become the primary buyers of your $27 digital toolkit.
That makes sense.
Your newsletter subscribers become the warm leads for your high-ticket consulting services.
Because they already know you. You aren't pitching cold clients on LinkedIn anymore.
Exactly. They are coming to you because they have spent the last 6 months consuming your expertise for free.
It is the ultimate force multiplier.
It really is.
But building that audience inevitably triggers a very specific phenomenon.
What is that?
As your audience grows and people start really trusting your authority, they stop wanting just the general advice.
Oh, yes.
They start reaching out in your YouTube comments or replying to your newsletter emails, basically saying, hey, I love the digital guide. It makes total sense. But my situation is incredibly complicated.
Can I just pay you to look at my specific problem and tell me what to do?
Exactly. And that organic inbound demand sets up the fifth and perhaps most surprisingly lucrative income stream in the entire framework.
Stream number 5, coaching and mentoring.
Okay, I have to admit, the word coaching carries a lot of baggage for people.
It does. It really does.
For a lot of people listening, the immediate reaction is extreme imposter syndrome. They hear coaching and think it requires a wall full of Ivy League psychology degrees or a certification from some expensive institute.
Or millions of followers.
Right. They think, who am I to coach anyone?
The script aggressively dismantles every single one of those assumptions. It redefines what a coach actually is in this context.
How does M. Rowe define it?
She defines it as the delivery of structured guidance, accountability, and specific expertise to an individual trying to solve an acute problem.
Which is usually delivered via one-on-one video calls or like asynchronous messaging.
Right.
But what are the credentials? If I'm not a certified life coach, how can I ethically charge for this?
The author provides a profoundly empowering answer to this. She says your lived experience is the credential.
Your lived experience is the credential.
Yes. The true qualification for mentoring someone isn't a piece of paper. It is simply having successfully navigated a difficult, complex path that someone else is currently standing at the very beginning of.
I really want to dig into that because it's so powerful. So if someone successfully navigated, let's say, a brutal corporate burnout and transitioned into a totally different industry in their 40s, that process, that actual survival story is a monetizable asset.
Absolutely. Think about the sheer volume of trial and error, the emotional toll, and the hidden pitfalls involved in a massive life transition like that.
It's massive.
Have you recovered from bankruptcy? Have you navigated the complex logistics of moving a family of 4 to Spain?
Have you figured out how to build a freelance copywriting business from $0 to $5,000 a month?
Exactly. If you came out the other side with a methodology that could have saved you 6 months of pain and thousands of dollars if someone had just handed it to you at the start,
then you possess highly valuable intellectual property.
You do.
I love the way you put that. It makes me think of walking through a minefield.
Okay, let's hear the minefield analogy.
If I am forced to walk across a literal minefield today, I am not going to hire the guy who wrote a theoretical thesis on explosive compounds but has never left the classroom.
No, definitely not.
I am going to throw my wallet at the person who successfully walked through that exact same minefield yesterday.
Yep.
I do not care about their degree. I just want them to point to the exact spots on the ground where I should put my feet so I don't blow up.
You are paying for the survival map.
Exactly. You are paying for the survival map.
That is exactly what coaching is. It is the transfer of the survival map. And why does this survive a recession?
Because people need guidance more than ever.
Because when the economy gets tough, the minefield gets more dangerous. People become totally paralyzed by the overwhelming amount of conflicting information online.
They don't want another top 10 listicle to read.
No. They want a human being to look at the chaotic mess of their specific life, cut through the noise and say, here's where you are making a mistake, here's the next step you need to take, and here is how I will hold you accountable to actually doing it.
And the economics of delivering this are beautiful, especially when we apply that geo-arbitrage lens one more time.
Oh, it scales incredibly well.
You are delivering this immense high-ticket value over a simple Zoom call. Your client could be an executive sitting in a high-rise in London, happily paying you 200 British pounds for an hour of clarity.
Right.
Meanwhile, you are sitting on a balcony in Thailand, and that 200 pounds literally covers your rent for a week.
The equation works flawlessly, with zero overhead from anywhere on Earth with a Wi-Fi connection.
So we now have all 5 tools laid out on the workbench. Consulting, digital products, freelancing, content creation, and coaching.
It is a comprehensive recession-proof toolkit for decoupling your income from your location.
But let's be honest, if I am sitting here listening to this right now, I might be feeling a little overwhelmed, like bordering on panic.
It's a lot of information.
It is a lot of infrastructure. Do I have to master all 5 of these streams, launch a YouTube channel, write an ebook, pitch on Upwork, and build a consulting firm before I'm allowed to book my flight to Portugal?
Not at all. Attempting to build all 5 simultaneously would be a catastrophic recipe for burnout.
Thank goodness.
And this brings us to the crucial final section of the script, the master plan, or how to actually execute Relocate with revenue.
Okay, what is the plan?
The explicit advice is that you do not need all 5 streams. You only need to start with one.
Just one. Focus on one, get it, generating cash flow, and then maybe deliberately build a second stream over a runway of 6 to 12 months.
Yes, 2 streams seem to be the sweet spot for a solid foundation, so you aren't completely reliant on a single point of failure.
Right. The goal is sequenced execution, not chaotic multitasking.
Exactly. And the brilliance of this strategy is totally visible in how Emro structures the ecosystem for her own client.
Well, yeah, if you look at her site.
She has built this asynchronous funnel of increasing commitment that perfectly mirrors the streams we just discussed.
Right. If you go to relocatewithrevenue.com, you see this in action immediately. For the person who is just curious, who is just starting to daydream and needs to explore the possibilities without overwhelm, there is the relocation toolkit.
It's low commitment, high clarity.
Then as the customer moves from curious to committed, when they know they want to build location-independent income, but need the exact mathematical sequence of what to build first, she offers the digital relocation blueprint.
That's the structured package solution we talked about.
Exactly. And finally, for the people who have consumed the blueprint, who understand all the concepts, but need a custom roadmap tailored to their specific career history, their specific timeline, and their specific anxieties.
She offers one-on-one strategy sessions.
She uses coaching to look at their specific minefield and map out the steps. It is a literal masterclass in applying the exact theory she teaches.
It really is. But underneath all the mechanics, the funnels, and the geo-arbitrage math, this raises an incredibly important question about the emotional reality of making this leap.
Yeah, the emotion behind it is huge.
The script is remarkably vulnerable in its conclusion. The author openly admits that she initially made the exact mistake she is warning us against.
She moved before her income was fully stabilized.
She did. She knows firsthand the paralyzing anxiety of trying to figure out how to survive while watching your savings bleed out in a foreign country.
And that pain is why she is so adamant about the sequence. Income first, freedom always.
Right.
She understands the profound emotional difference between relocating with revenue and just relocating.
When you move without the income securely in place, the financial pressure acts like a toxin.
It poisons the whole experience.
It can mutate a beautiful dream destination into an isolated prison. You can't enjoy the beach because you are terrified about next month's rent.
You become desperate.
And desperation forces you into making bad decisions, taking terrible clients, accepting low rates, or eventually just giving up and flying home defeated.
When you build the income stream first, when you test the consulting offer, when you get the freelance bridge stable, when your digital product starts actually making sales,
you change the entire psychological dynamic of the move.
you move with confidence rather than blind hope. You are moving towards an infrastructure you have deliberately built rather than just running away from a cubicle out of desperation.
It replaces fantasy with architecture. You are meticulously building the bridge out of your own skills before you attempt to cross the chasm.
It completely reframes the narrative of the expat dream.
It takes this chaotic, romanticized movie script notion of running away to find yourself, and it transforms it into a highly rational, predictable, and executable business operation.
So let's pull back and look at the massive journey we've just mapped out today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by discarding the traditional capital-heavy advice of real estate and dividend portfolios. Not because they don't work eventually, but because they lock up your capital and require too much time when you need an escape hatch today.
Instead, we pivoted to the assets you already control, your lived experience and your professional skills.
We broke down consulting as the high-yield method of selling specific outcomes to corporate panic.
We looked at freelancing as the immediate, flexible scaffolding, powered by the incredible mathematical leverage of geo-arbitrage.
We then explored how to break the time for money trap by packaging your knowledge into scalable digital products, understanding the psychology of why people pay for curated solutions, even when raw information is free.
We discussed the slow, powerful burn of building a content engine to feed all these streams and how attention consolidates toward quality during a recession.
And finally, we looked at coaching and mentoring as the ultimate way to monetize your own survival maps, delivering high-ticket clarity to people navigating the exact minefields you have already crossed.
5 distinct recession-resilient streams engineered to give you the ultimate leverage, the ability to decouple your survival from your zip code.
Which brings us right back to where we started, that wall before the airport.
Right.
That heavy, sinking feeling that the daydream is impossible because of the logistics of reality. The entire thesis of this script is that the wall is an illusion.
Or rather, it is just a problem of sequence.
The lack of money isn't the obstacle. The lack of a structured architecture to generate location-independent income is the obstacle. Once you build the architecture, the wall simply disappears.
I want to leave the listener with a final thought to really mull over, building on that concept of lived experience as a credential.
Okay, let's hear it.
I challenge you to look at your life right now. Put down your professional, polished resume for a second and look at the actual messy narrative of your life.
What are you looking for?
Ask yourself, what is the single most complex transition, the deepest crisis, or the most painful hurdle that you have successfully navigated in the last 5 years?
Maybe you figured out how to aggressively pay off $80,000 of debt while on a teacher's salary.
Maybe you navigated the incredibly complex logistics of securing dual citizenship.
Or maybe you managed to keep a small business afloat during a massive supply chain crisis.
Whatever that survival story is, it is not just a closed chapter in your past. It is an incredibly valuable blueprint.
There is someone else out there in the world right now, sitting in front of a spreadsheet, awake at 2 in the morning, absolutely terrified.
Wishing someone would just show them the way out of the exact problem you have already solved.
Your lived experience is their lifeline. And realizing that, well, that might just be the exact ticket you need to build your own borderless life.